So we're locked into our continuing coverage of what the Trump administration is doing right now, stepping in to do what Democrat leaders refuse to do in their own states, crack down on fraud within the welfare system, right? And what began as a local issue has now gone viral thanks to the Nick Shirley video and turned into a national story where you can see Democrats scrambling, desperately trying to redirect attention away from what's actually happening in Minnesota. And at the center of this is the Somali fraud scandal that has been allowed to operate unchecked. And sitting right in the middle of it all was the infamous Quality Leering Center. Yes, that Quality Leering Center, where they told you everything was fine, nothing to see here. The books show we're running a clean business. But now the license says closed. No press conference, no apology, no accountability tour. Just quiet change to the official records. After weeks of insisting this was all exaggerated and misunderstood. It was politically motivated, remember? And I think that tells you everything you need to know. And so smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video. That way more people can see what's really going on. But first, let's start with the hearing on the massive fraud scandal. A hearing where Democrats seem determined to talk about everything except the fraud happening in Minnesota.
It was a hearing on the massive fraud scandal there, and it got personal and cringy. Progressive Democrats were yelling at Republicans like children who couldn't get their way. Republicans accused Democrats of political covering up, and one even called for criminal referrals for top Minnesota leaders. Watch this.
Raise your hand if you oppose Trump's pardon of this Minnesota individual.
Ma'am, this grandstanding nonsense
this is not grandstanding.
Exactly
this is
what Minnesotans hate about D.C.
This is accountability, and you are hypocrites. So again, I will take your refusal to not
Mr. Chairman, order, decorum. She's off the rails.
Reclaiming my time. I'm not off the rails, please.
You are
enough
totally
with your
off the rails.
Nancy, enough with your tropes. Give me my time back.
Order, Mr. Chairman.
If Republicans were serious about reclaiming my time,
you press your time. You have no time left. You're over time. You're over time.
You're out of time.
You're out of time.
There's no time left.
We're done here.
Out of time.
At least 10 seconds.
Out of time.
Time's expired.
Out of order and out of time.
Ms. Presley, you've already secured your MSNBC spot tonight.
Ayanna Pressley, that congresswoman needs to go ahead and give Maxine Waters her reclaiming her time. I think she owns that line. The second Oversight Committee hearing is set for February 10th, and Chairman Comer says subpoenas for Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison are coming next. Comer has requested they appear. They have not agreed to do so. Congressional correspondent Bill Malugin with more. Bill.
Yeah, Harris, good morning to you. This House Oversight Committee hearing was supposed to be about the widespread fraud scandal going on in Minnesota, but several committee Democrats appeared to want to talk about anything except that fraud. Take a listen.
What percent of sexual assaults in the United States are committed by white men?
I have legislation that will take Trump's name off that building and restore it.
Raise your hand if you oppose the pardon of George Santos.
I stand with the Somali and the immigrant community.
Mr. Ballou, are you aware of allegations that $50,000 in taxpayer dollars have been given to someone that is currently sitting in this administration by the name of Tom Homan?
And Harris, as you mentioned, that hearing also went off the rails multiple times. That included a clash between House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer and one of the committee's Democrats.
Ms. Lee, the IGs are hired to identify fraud. They haven't identified fraud. The IGs have failed. But anyway.
You all have failed.
No,
you all continue to fail. We've done nothing. You've had the gavel, Mr. Comer. We barely do hearings on anything that actually affects change.
And so right now what we're seeing from Democrats on the left is a deliberate effort to create chaos, because chaos is the only tool they have left. They're hoping that if they stir things up enough, if they create enough confusion and noise, that people will just eventually believe them when they try and shift blame back to Trump. But none of that changes any of the facts. And the facts show that the level of fraud occurring in Democrat-run states, especially in places like Minnesota, as we've been learning, is absolutely mind-blowing. And that's why now the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, has now announced that the Trump administration is stepping in and taking concrete action and cracking down on this fraud. Take a listen.
This is an outrage. President Trump is outraged. I'm outraged. The whole administration is outraged. And we are here to follow the money because that's what Treasury does. We have done that for years. We did it with the mafia. We have done it with the cartels. And now we are going to do it with these Somali fraudsters. And Treasury has something called FinCEN, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and we are coming in, tomorrow we are announcing that 4 investigations into money service businesses that we believe may have wired money out of the country, a lot of the ill-gotten, stolen money over to the Middle East, over to Somalia. We'll see where that's going, so we're announcing investigations into 4 of those money service businesses. We are going to put in what we call a geographical targeting order. So there's something called a suspicious activity report if a certain amount of money gets wired
$10,000, right?
So we're lowering that to $3,000.
Oh, good.
And we're also targeting the 2 counties here, and we're going to do enhanced surveillance. And from now on, anyone who wires money out from one of these money service businesses has to check a box saying whether they are on public assistance. And if you are on public assistance, we are going to start pushing that you cannot wire money out of the country.
Oh, gosh. Well, what if they lie and they don't tell us for public assistance?
Well, then
That's a crime, lying on a federal form.
We're going to follow it up, and we are going to push that you can no longer do that. The American people, our generosity has been taken advantage of.
And so you heard that. And so let me explain why this matters, because there are going to be people, they're going to want to say this is cruel or racist or anti-immigrant. And no, this is about the fraud. If the fraud doesn't exist, you don't have this problem. And clearly this is about the taxpayer money. And this is clearly about the system that got so loose in Minnesota that now the federal government was forced to step in and basically say enough. And so the Treasury Secretary plan is simple: follow the money. Because when you have massive welfare fraud allegations, the very first question someone's going to ask is, where did the money go? And in this Minnesota case, Treasury is saying they're looking at the money moving through certain channels, including the money service businesses, right? And when you consider the fact that Somalia is a country that heavily depends on remittances, money sent from people living abroad back to their family overseas, which the World Bank has described as a major pillar of the Somali economy. If you're living off of public benefits in America and you're sending large sums of money overseas, the government is going to ask, where did that money come from? What is it connected to? And who is really benefiting? Because if it's legit, you can document it. And if it's not, then you have some explaining to do.
The IRS called criminal investigations. And these men and women, they are cool cats. They can take apart a balance sheet and they can knock down a door and arrest someone. Like, they go out on patrols, they can make arrests. It's this very interesting hybrid force, about 2,500 of them, and they led the charge here. So it was IRS CIs who uncovered the initial fraud and the prosecutions. So it's with that group, with other groups at IRS, and with the powers of the Treasury to track where the money came from, where it's going. We saw the very unsettling news yesterday that many people involved here with the administration of these programs have tried to go back and they recreate documents, change documents, and we're not going to have that. We are going to hold people accountable. We're going to press this to the full extent possible. And like I said, I think that this may just be, it's a cold day outside, so this could be the tip of the iceberg here in Minnesota, but it's probably may not be as prevalent, but the dollars may be bigger and larger in other states. And just to put this in perspective for American taxpayers, for American families, the GAO, the General Accounting Office, believes that there is somewhere between $300 and $600 billion of annual fraud, roughly 10% of government spending, that disappears due to fraud. If we can recapture that, that is 1 to 2% of GDP.
Ladies and gentlemen, when we're talking about fraud in the billions, I mean, when we talk about any fraud, but when you're talking about fraud in the billions, that money doesn't come from anywhere. It comes from taxpayers, from people who get up every day, go to work, and play by the rules. And here's the part that you can't get past. Every dollar lost to fraud has to be made up somewhere else. That's how you end up with things like higher taxes, fewer services, cuts to programs that people actually rely on, or debt piled up onto the next generation. Yes. And so when billions disappear through fraud, the government doesn't just shrug it off and move on. Well, better luck next time. No, they either have to raise the burden for working Americans or they print more money, which fuels inflation. And inflation is just a hidden tax anyway. And so you're paying for fraud whether you realize it or not. And that brings us to the infamous Quality Learning Center. We remember the daycare, right? The same one the Minnesota Department of Children's Commissioner initially said was closed.
One of the centers, Quality Learning Center, closed just over a week ago.
Only for it to turn out it was still open, at least according to them, and operating. And then we watched all the footage, kids being bussed in, the manager saying nothing to see here, we're a legit business, just a normal operation, according to them at least. Well, now we're being told the Quality Learning Center is apparently closed again. This time it sounds like for good. Take a listen.
Tonight, we are following up on a Minneapolis daycare at the center of questions about fraud in Minnesota's Child Care Assistance Program.
We have been tracking CCAP funding for more than a year. Investigative reporter Eric Rasmussen is here with new developments, raising, Eric, even more questions.
You might have heard this name. We're talking about the Quality Learning Center near downtown Minneapolis. First, it was closed, then it was open, and now we've confirmed it's closed again. That's all after the owners recently rejected allegations of stealing taxpayer money. Back at the Quality Learning Center in Minneapolis, it was a case of deja vu. Hi, this is Eric Rasmussen with KSTP Channel 5. We're still waiting for a response to our calls and emails looking for an explanation about what 5 Investigates found Wednesday morning. A search of the state's online system reveals Quality Learning Center now closed as of January 6th. A 180-degree turn after our cameras recorded a parade of parents and children into the business last week. The owners used that to refute a viral YouTube video claiming to expose empty daycares, collecting millions of taxpayer dollars.
Someone came to our building outside of operating hours.
So why is the daycare suddenly closed again? The Department of Children, Youth, and Families would only tell 5 Investigates that Quality Learning Center requested closure of their license on Tuesday. No answer from the daycare's owner when property records led us to this house in Shoreview looking for answers. What do you make of the fact that right after that big scene last week that they're closed again?
Well, to me, that's, where there's smoke, there's fire. Perhaps they're trying to avoid something.
State Rep Nolan West says questions about Quality Learning Center prompted him to send a letter to the head of DCYF demanding more transparency and accountability when it comes to which licensed daycare providers in Minnesota are actually open. A question KSTP has been asking for a long time since reporter Jay Coles found empty daycares receiving taxpayer funding a year ago. What do you think may actually come out of your letter, our reporting, all this attention?
Well, the idea is we need this to be taken seriously because we need bipartisan cooperation to pass any law in Minnesota. And clearly, we are in need of more anti-fraud measures.
As we reported last week, DCYF says that Daycare Quality Learning Center received $1.9 million in taxpayer funding in just the last fiscal year. Now, the agency declined our request for another interview today, but I can tell you it said the operators of Quality Learning Center must now reapply for another license if they ever want to reopen again.
It's hard to keep track of that center, what's been going on this week, all over the place.
A lot happening.
Yeah, Eric, thank you.
So hold on, let's walk through this again. From closed to open, right, to closed again. And let's not forget the nearly $2 million in taxpayer money they received last year. So how does this work? Somebody explain to me. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that right there is why you saw the frustration and anger from the Somali community when Nick Shirley exposed the fraudsters out there for exactly what they were doing. Because he blew up the operation. He ruined the gravy train. These people were living good. I mean, real good. And then all of a sudden, this 20-something-year-old YouTuber comes along and exposes the entire scheme. Of course, you're going to get some very angry, very upset people. But this didn't happen by accident. This was a team effort. Because the moment the fraud was exposed, suddenly now out of nowhere, kids are showing up. Parents dropping off kids like it's business as usual. Business managers doing press conferences and Tim Walz crying hate and racism. Everyone in Minnesota trying to show face. Trying to make it seem like everything was legit. It's almost like the parents, the managers, and certain Minnesota leaders were all involved at different levels trying to keep the operation alive once the spotlight hit. Different scam, same tactics. This is just similar to what we saw with the Feeding Our Future scam that happened a few years ago that got uncovered. And they were discussing that during the hearing. Take a listen.
Was there any threat of a lawsuit from the Somali community and folks affiliated with Feeding Our Future?
Mr. Jordan, there was more than a threat. They actually did it.
They did? And what was the alleged claim in that lawsuit?
That they were victims of racial discrimination.
Oh, they played the race card, huh? All this fraud going on, money going out, and they played the race card. Now, when I talked about not just overlooking it, there was a meeting that took place between the Attorney General and affiliates of Feeding Our Future. Is that right?
That is correct.
And what happened at that meeting? Do we know?
Yeah, we do, because we have it on tape. There was an audio recording made at that meeting that was entered into evidence in the Feeding Our Future trial, and it was later revealed through work from Center of the American Experiment, the full recording. And my observations of what took place in that meeting was that Attorney General Keith Ellison was focused on one thing and one thing only, and that was keeping these folks in business. There were no questions that he asked of these folks about how the kids are doing, the operation, how they're getting fed, who's being helped. Instead, the focus was entirely on ensuring that the money continues to flow. And I'll add that he went so far as to say that he was going to fight these people in reference to the state agencies. The state agencies are his client.
Yeah, and when you said money's going to flow, did money flow to Mr. Ellison's campaign a couple weeks later from some of the folks who were in that meeting?
Sure did.
Listen, what we're watching unfold in Minnesota right now, it's simple. The jig is up. The Quality Learning Center closed. Tim Walz announces he's not running for re-election. I said this from the very beginning. Fraud on this scale does not exist in a vacuum. You don't move this kind of money without cover. You don't operate this long without some level of protection. You don't keep the scheme alive unless people with power are either looking the other way on purpose or actively shielding it. Now, to what extent these public officials were involved, I'll be honest, we may never know. That depends on how well the tracks were covered, how deep the system was compromised, and how hard anyone is willing to dig, quite honestly.
Here, what percentage of Somali-headed households in Minnesota are on Medicaid?
I don't know.
It's 73%. Do you know what that number is for Minnesota native households?
Again, you're using the phrase Minnesota native households, but the majority...
The number is 18%. That's quite an astounding difference. I think we would agree.
Can I answer the question, please?
Let me ask you one more, and then we can go on to that. What percentage of Somali-headed households are on welfare in general?
I don't know.
It's 81%. What about, let me just ask you, after 10 years of being in the United States, what percentage of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare?
I don't know.
The number is 78%. So even after 10 years, 78% of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare. Do you know what that number is for native Minnesota-headed households?
Again, you're using
non-Somali immigrant-headed households.
If I can just answer the question, when you're using the phrase native Minnesotans, the majority of Somali Minnesotans are as Minnesotan as any of us. They were born in the United States. It's only 8,000 of the 108,000 Somali.
Nevertheless, the welfare usage is astoundingly different. Let me ask you again, does that make Minnesota stronger or weaker?
Again, I'd like the opportunity to answer the question here.
Go for
it. Again, the majority of Somali Minnesotans are born in the United States, as I understand it.
Okay, well, what percentage of working age Somalians who have been in the U.S. for 10 years or more 10 years or more, how many of them speak English very well?
I don't know.
About half. The answer is about half. That seems pretty low, doesn't it?
Again, I keep trying
It
to
doesn't
make
sound like something that makes our country stronger to me, and I think most Americans would agree with me on that. I need to move on. Ms. Robbins, when would you say we concretely knew that widespread welfare fraud was occurring in Minnesota?
There have been reports since 2009 from the Office of Legislative Auditor. I would say the credible reports on childcare fraud started surfacing 2011 to 2013.
So for over a decade.
Yes, sir.
When do you think Governor Walz knew about this fraud?
From the very beginning. He was running for governor in 2018 when there were prosecutions going on, when there was an OLA report, active cases in the news all the time.
And what was the Walz administration's response?
They actually did nothing when they got into office, and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan had been on the committee in the legislature that had hearings on childcare fraud, and when they got into office, they did put $5 million into a little more money, but nothing changed.
But nothing. And let me ask you, Mr. Hudson, thank you for being here. Did those who commit this fraud, do they typically vote for Republicans or Democrats, in your opinion?
In my opinion, thank you for qualifying it like that, I would say they most definitely overwhelmingly vote for Democrats.
Do they typically donate to Republicans or Democrats?
Not to my knowledge. They
opinion?
don't donate to Republicans, they donate to Democrats, in my opinion, yes.
Got it. So would you say this is the Somali population is an important demographic for Democrats to win over politically?
Unquestionably.
Got it. And do you think it would have hurt Democrats' political standing with the Somali population to investigate this fraud?
Very clearly.
Wow. Go ahead and leave your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think. As always, smash that thumbs up. Let me know you love the content. Subscribe to the channel for more and share this video. That way more people see what's really going on. Until next time.